Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my second server's learning project. Been a while since the last one, huh? Well, you know the drill. If you ain't got the time, be sure to hit that watch later button. Come back when you got a little more spare time in your hands. With that said, let's begin. Last year, I battled with the topic of misinformation, why it's important to fully research a topic so that you don't run the risk of spreading said misinformation. This year, however, will be a little different because I want to talk about political correctness and why we should redefine how it's used. Before we start discussing how it should be refined, first we obviously will have to define it. The Google definition states that the avoidance often considered as taken to extreme of forms of expression or action that are perceived to exclude, marginalize, or insult groups of people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against. Now that's all fine good. However, the further I looked into this topic, the more I saw that a lot of people didn't see political correctness under this image. Some classify political correctness as other matters entirely, or others arguing that any form of censorship falls under political correctness. Not to mention how many websites there are with titles such as 100 politically correct words to include into your vocabulary, or discover 100 politically correct words or phrases, which seem to be talking about the same thing, but are actually the exact opposite to each other, which can confuse people. Here's one article actively trying to get its readers to see the importance of political correctness and even offering alternative words to help in that endeavor, while the other article is doing the exact opposite. This is why I feel like it's important to redefine the word itself and how it's used. I want to make the argument that political correctness can be a good thing. However, it should be used in small doses and it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all solution. Like some of these websites are pushing it should be, which in reality it really shouldn't. The main reason I think it shouldn't be used as the one-size-fits-all solution is because of a thing called the euphemism treadmill. This is going to be important later on, so let's put a pin in it for the moment. You see, the issue with politically correct words is that the reason they exist is because they're used as an easy way of avoiding the use of another word that might offend someone, which should be a good thing. However, this is where the euphemism treadmill shines, because the basic rundown of it goes something like this. A regular word by a series of unfortunate events becomes offensive, and thus an alternative word comes in to replace it, so that it doesn't offend anyone. However, nothing is stopping the new word from becoming offensive, and when it does, another word has to come in to replace it. The main problem the treadmill highlights is that political correctness can really only help alleviate the symptoms of the larger problem at play here. Basically, the idea is that every time in this treadmill a new word is added, it's just gonna eventually become an offensive word again, and this cycle keeps repeating itself. To paint a clearer picture, it would be the equivalent of getting sick, but instead of going to the doctor to figure out what the actual problem is, and then getting the proper treatment, you instead decide to just throw another blanket over yourself because you're feeling a little chilly. Sure, you made the situation slightly more bearable, but you're still sick. This is why the websites that try to shove politically correct words on your throat don't really work, because again, we're treating the symptoms and not the problem itself. This is also the reason why it should be used in small doses, because the more and more the cycle repeats itself, the more and more offensive words you unintentionally start to make. Political correctness is important because of the fact that these words exist. However, it would make more sense to use it to police the already existing offensive words, instead of using it to create whole new ones that'll eventually just fall into the same cycle again. Now, that may have just sounded like there's nothing good about political correctness. However, there is some good to it, such as the ways of feeling comfortable talking to other people. What I mean by this is that there was a little study that tried to figure out if political correctness hindered creativity in any way. And what they found was that between a group of two people, one who had pre-established rules of things they couldn't talk about, and another who didn't, they found that the group who had the pre-established political correctness could brainstorm a lot easier because of the fact that they felt more comfortable being around one another. They had the benefit of knowing what topics to avoid as to not cause any trouble amongst the group, while the other group had to sort of establish that on the spot, which resulted in their ideas/suggestions being more general as to not offend each other. They were basically trying to figure out what they could get away with the whole time, while the former didn't have to worry about that since they already knew. This is where political correctness shines, and I feel like how it should be used. Instead of having it be this one-size-fits-all solution, it should probably be personalized with the people you're talking to. And the great part about that is that's kind of what happens when that what happens naturally when you interact with people anyway. The more you get to know someone, such as your best friend, the easier it is to talk with them since you're constantly not thinking about stepping on a metaphorical landmine. Political correctness should probably be used in a similar manner as to something like the first day of school, like when the teacher grabs a big poster and hangs it on the wall to start writing classroom rules. But instead of writing responsibilities on our metaphorical poster, would probably be something more to a tune of what we're comfortable with. And again, it should be very fluid, seeing as the situations are very fluid in themselves. To give an example, let's say in drama class, you're talking about a play with some mature themes. Most of the time, the teacher will ask if what the students feel comfortable performing or saying, or what the students feel comfortable performing or saying. And from there, you can establish a classroom norm on what's acceptable. And since we're being mindful of how everyone feels, that accomplishes what political correctness was trying to do in the first place. And this is a very real practice. Like I had in drama last year, I had a very similar situation where we were reading out a play that had some more mature themes and certain offensive words per se were some of the dialogue. The teacher then asked the classroom as a whole what they felt comfortable saying and performing with, so that we could establish, a norm for ourselves and see, okay, this is what's acceptable. In short, political correctness can be a very good tool in establishing an environment where everyone feels comfortable talking with one another. However, it's just that, a tool shouldn't be the answer to every problem, just as every tool has its own purpose. Political correctness is just one of the many things you'll use on the path to create something truly cool. Anyways, bye bye!